Children deserve, like, detailed stop motion.
As Kirsten Lepore, our animation director, put it at a Q&A, it actually takes so much more effort to make things be invisible and effortless.
She's just so one of a kind, incredible.
People think it takes a long time, but like, it really takes a long time. Like, I would say a good reference for people to think about is like, you know, on an ideal day, you might get, you know, 5, maybe 10 seconds of footage, and that's like 10 seconds. Like, that's a killer shoot day, you know, one animator getting a 10-second shot. I think that's a good sort of frame of reference for how labor intensive it is, but also how much it sort of pays off and you get the magic of the real objects.
To play this character who is heavily improvised, and then pair it with a process that at once has to be filled with life. Like, you have to be completely open and also detail-oriented down to the tiniest minutia in order to make Marcel seem like his emotions aren't just coming out of his mouth, but that they're in his body. That's a real honor. It's like a real honor to have one of my performances paired with that type of art, because there is so much dedication to that intention. And that feels really good. And it's actually something we've tried for Marcel, like in general, you know, with our children's books, all of the images in those books are oil paintings done by an oil painter named Amy Lind. It's the same pairing that, like, I think the thinking behind that has always been that adults enjoy Marcel, and children do too. One thing people don't often give to children is like rich art. And like, we were like, children deserve oil paintings. They should just have Marcel in them, you know? Children deserve like detailed stop motion.
Dean was very involved in the whole process. I mean, we, from the beginning, like from the time the audio play was ready and all the voices were recorded, we worked really closely together, storyboarding everything. So it was literally just us on Zoom, basically back and forth, just planning out every single shot meticulously in board form. So we had really our kind of whole roadmap of what to do once we came to the studio to actually shoot.
I mean, I think your job as a director is to prepare like a mad person and be a total perfectionist in the preparation, and then when you're actually on set, be willing to throw everything out the window and just be an opportunist.
I mean, I was both on set for the live action shoot, really involved in every shot, making sure we're sort of timing out, okay, how far are we moving Marcel? You know, like in this very, you know, like in 5 seconds, how far would he move? And I had kind of like a little puppet on a stick that I would approximate and sort of like bop it along. And then once we got to the stop motion shoot, then we sort of translated that to that stage, and Dean was with me on every single stage. We would powwow before each shot and sort of like act out, like a lot of times like I would play Marcel, he would play Connie, and we would just kind of play off of each other and figure out, okay, what is the performance that we're really going for here? Before we even go in to talk to the animators. And then once we game planned and got on the same page, we would go in and we would usually just act it out for the animators, sometimes also making a reference video for them, just so they have as much information as possible going into their shot, because it takes them, you know, a whole day, sometimes 2 days to do an entire shot. So you want to avoid retakes as much as possible, because you don't want someone redoing like 2 days of work where they've been like painstakingly laboring over a tiny puppet for, you know, so many hours.
When Dean is dedicated to an aesthetic, he does it all the way. He is the first true artist that I feel like I've ever met besides my own parents. And then to see his work replicated by this entire team, you know, it was incredible that there was just still a connection even with all of these other people there. They all know who lives here. They all care.
Even in the board phase, like, we had a lot of fun coming up with like, okay, what does, one that comes to mind is like, you know, what is Connie's little meal like that we cut to? And it's like, okay, it's a quarter with like a generic goldfish cracker and like a little piece of like dust on top, you know, for garnish. Like those little things, there were tons of them, like, and just finding what those little jokey moments are that play with scale was, I think, one of the most fun parts of the process. Also, like down the line, once it came time to design Marcel's family members, like the extended community shells, we brought in another friend of ours, this woman Akko, and we all kind of sat together and went shopping to all these like crazy electronic stores and like really specific niche places all over LA. like this shell store that was amazing, and we just like collected tons of stuff and then laid it out on the table, and we just spent hours like designing little characters out of the actual props. And I think that's, you know, something that you wouldn't be able to necessarily just figure out off the top of your head as you're even boarding. Like, we really tried to be as hands-on as possible in finding those actual real objects, you know, in the spirit of Marcel. He's an actual real shell. That's one of the fun parts about doing it in stop motion too. Like, that's what makes this movie so much like tied to this specific medium. Like, it really can't be done in CG. Like, I feel like the thing that makes it truly real and using these actual real objects, like that is sort of at the heart of stop motion and working with actual things.
You have to surrender yourself to the current moment. And this movie was an exercise in that, because the whole point was to try to make it feel authentically spontaneous and documentary. But obviously when you're telling a story with stop motion, live action hybrid that is has all these things going on, you can't. It's an illusion that was in any way spontaneous.
There are really no films that are shot like this. I mean, with the exception of like Monkey Bone a long time ago. Even that isn't a great comp because it's kind of like a bigger puppet. So we really had nothing to go off of and how to sort of figure out how do we shoot this movie, how do we make it work, and how do we make it really, really naturalistic and feel like, oh, Marcel was just, we turned a video camera on and we just captured him. So that was, you know, definitely a challenge. There was a moment where we were considering, okay, maybe we actually shoot it in the house and have the animators like down on the floor, you know, crouching like with the puppets. Maybe we control all the lighting in the entire house and like flag off all the windows. So that was something we considered, but in the end I think that would be a little too physically grueling for those animators, because houses aren't built like stop motion sets. You know, stop motion sets are built very particularly so you can get underneath them, you can like tie things down, really get access to everything you need to on that miniature stage. So ultimately we ended up going that direction, but a lot of other tests of crazy camera heads and recording, you know, the camera's motion and translating that to the stage. There were so many things we played with, and then ultimately we figured, okay, we have to shoot this twice and just sort of comp it in a more traditional way.
I felt very committed to trying to make this as much like a real documentary as possible, and I'd never seen a quote-unquote mockumentary that actually took its subject seriously and treated them with dignity. And so it was kind of always a question of, well, how do we solve these problems? How does Marcel get, you know, to his stockpile or whatever? How does he get from one room to another quickly, while also, you know, trying to keep it within the realm of possibility? Because with an animated character, you know, you could make him fly or whatever. You're not bound by those live action rules. But so I think we were constantly trying to gut check ourselves against what a real documentary would look like and do.
In movies for children, there will be sorrow, there will be loneliness or fear. But this is a movie for everyone. And I think one thing that I try to do, not just as an artist, but as a person, is to soothe the child that remains inside of me. And I've also learned that now as a parent, that through your art and through your behavior with other people, you can start to kind of like, if you want to, sort of reparent yourself. And a lot of that has to do with allowing for a big variety of emotions to be held inside of even the smallest individual. And, you know, it's like, it would be easy to make Marcel like just be cute. But instead, I think what Dean and I really wanted to do, and we were like, well, when it comes down to it, when we're alone as Dean and Jenny, what makes us feel good, what makes us feel satiated is putting as many emotions as possible into one place.